Good morning. 98 days ago, based on the vision of President Trump and Vice President Vance, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche announced the creation of the National Fraud Enforcement Division at the Department of Justice. Our goal is to protect taxpayer dollars and stop the brazen thievery of America's wealth and generosity. In the last 98 days, the Department of Justice has announced over 900 major fraud enforcement actions across the country, including cases targeting billions of taxpayer dollars supporting Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP benefits, unemployment benefits, education benefits, and more. Today, alongside the Department of Homeland Security and other federal partners, we are announcing an extraordinary enforcement milestone in a new frontier of fraud enforcement. That is trade and customs fraud. In less than 1 year since its launch, the Trade Fraud Task Force, which is now a permanent force within our fraud division, has officially surpassed $1 billion in criminal and civil recoveries, penalties, forfeitures, and charged losses. For too long, bad actors seeking to exploit the American economy have decided that ignoring and violating U.S. customs laws is a business risk worth taking. Those days are over. Trade fraud schemes impose severe financial consequences to the United States, depriving the country of billions of dollars every year. These fraud schemes threaten our national and economic security, steal from taxpayers, undermine American businesses, fund foreign adversaries, introduce hazardous goods into our markets, and exploit modern-day slavery. The Fraud Division and the Trade Fraud Task Force are laser-focused on these schemes and will continue to bring the weight of the department to bring bad actors to justice. This milestone was only possible because of an unprecedented whole-of-government coalition. We have forged seamless operational partnerships between the Justice Department and Homeland Security Investigations and Customs and Border Protection, IRS Criminal Investigation, the EPA's Criminal Investigation Division, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Within DOJ itself, this effort spans the Fraud Division, Criminal Division, Civil Division, the Energy and Natural Resources Division, and more than 30 U.S. Attorneys' offices. I especially want to thank Cody Hirsch, the head of the Trade Fraud Task Force, who is doing a great job spearheading the department's efforts, and U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros, who has served as the task force lead prosecutorial partner. The case that propelled us past the $1 billion milestone was brought right here in Chicago. Defendants Raj and Veena Kohli allegedly smuggled huge amounts of gold jewelry into the United States and systematically lied to customs officials about the origin of the jewelry. These alleged lies allowed these defendants to evade more than $38 million in duties, undercutting domestic manufacturers and denying funding to vital public services. Our actions prove our resolve to police the entire supply chain. Consider the recent guilty plea of Boise Cascade, resulting in a $6.3 million criminal fine, twice the alleged profit from the fraud. Boise Cascade was not the importer or the customs broker in this scheme, but they sought to profit from illegally imported birch plywood while displaying willful blindness towards its illicit origin, robbing American loggers of their livelihoods in the process. Let this serve as a warning. If you ignore supplier red flags to pad your margins, you will be held accountable. In May, as another example, 2 Canadian steel companies and their president agreed to pay $19 million to settle False Claims Act allegations of misreporting origins to evade anti-dumping duties, a tactic that artificially deflates prices and suffocates American steel mills. The scale of these schemes can be massive, but so is the department's response. In May, Perfectus Aluminum, Inc., agreed to pay more than $549 million to settle allegations that they knowingly avoided duties on 2.2 million aluminum extrusions that were disguised as pallets. This represented the largest civil customs settlement in False Claims Act history. Furthermore, we are aggressively prosecuting the individuals responsible. In December, department prosecutors in San Francisco charged 2 businessmen and a Chinese national for an elaborate transshipment and shell company scheme to evade duties on quartz, cabinets, and ceramic tiles. Corporate structures will not shield executives from personal criminal liability. Trade fraud is also fundamentally a matter of public safety, and this cannot be overstated. Lying to customs means skipping vital health and consumer protections. Consider the April sentencing of Royal Sovereign International, Inc. for willfully failing to report dangerously defective imported air conditioners to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Those AC units were linked to multiple fires, and tragically, a woman died and her children were injured as a result. Royal Sovereign was ordered to pay an $8 million criminal fine and restitution. Lying to the government directly introduces hazardous goods into American homes, and all should know that doing so is a fast track to prosecution. Perhaps most importantly, we are focused on eradicating forced labor, which traps nearly 30 million people globally and generates an estimated $236 billion in illicit profits each year. This is a profound humanitarian tragedy, and its economic ripples wash directly onto American shores. American workers cannot and should not have to compete with the economics of modern-day slavery. We will not tolerate these goods entering U.S. commerce. To build on these successes of our Trade Fraud Task Force, we are announcing 2 important additional steps today. First, the Department is formally establishing the Global Trade and Commerce Enforcement Section as a dedicated litigating component within the Fraud Division to lead this fight. This new section is the Department's front door for criminal trade and customs fraud enforcement, including external revenue evasion, forced labor and global supply chains, health and safety violations, and trade-based money laundering. Second, alongside DHS, we are releasing a seminal comprehensive resource guide to trade fraud enforcement. This guide puts our cards on the table. It outlines the specific fraud typologies we investigate and is designed to give everyone operating in the global trade space a transparent, multifaceted look into how the federal government evaluates supply chain integrity, offering a roadmap for preventing and remediating customs violations before federal law enforcement knocks on your door. Our message to corporate America is simple: assess your supply chains now. Under DOJ's corporate enforcement policy, companies that voluntarily self-disclose, cooperate, and remediate can secure a declination. Make no mistake, this $1 billion milestone is a baseline, not a finish line, and we are just getting started. The systems and data pipelines we built over the last year are now fully operational. To the fraudsters who think that they can slip under our radar, we are dedicated to finding you and bringing you to justice. And now I'll turn the podium over to United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, Andrew Boutros.
I think we could say good afternoon now. My name is Andrew Boutros, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. It's a privilege to stand here today with Assistant Attorney General McDonald and leadership from our agency partners as the lead prosecutorial partner of the Trade Fraud Task Force. To appreciate the significance of the task force, it's important to understand how its groundwork was laid right here in Chicago. The origin story of the task force goes back to a cold February in 2008, in just my second month on the job as a federal prosecutor here in the Northern District of Illinois. Like an emergency room doctor working in a hospital, I was on duty in the U.S. Attorney's Office that day, and I took a reactive call from a Homeland Security Investigations agent who wanted to execute a search warrant at a business in Chicago. The investigation involved the importation and sale of falsely declared and adulterated honey, flooding our markets from China. Crucially, the honey contained chloramphenicol, a severely restricted antibiotic for humans that was fed to bees when they were dying in large quantities due to a condition known as colony collapse. I reviewed the search warrant and told the agent to come back when he had more evidence. The agent's group supervisor, Mary Buderis, who's here today as one of our special guests of honors, couldn't believe that a new prosecutor would turn down their request. But rather than complain, the agents went out and got a lot more evidence. Weeks later, I applied for and secured that corporate search warrant, which the agents executed in March, setting off a multi-phase, nearly 8-year odyssey. Shortly after the search at that business, we received a tip that this company's senior executives, who were foreign nationals, were planning to flee the United States for Germany. We confirmed that they had already broken their apartment and car leases, canceled their utility services, that these executives were in fact fleeing. We worked around the clock for 2 days, staying in the office until 3 in the morning on one of those nights, searching through the evidence and drafting a complex criminal complaint charging those senior executives with federal crimes. And with the help of the Food and Drug Administration, the HSI agents and I successfully navigated a regulatory framework required to bring a very unique criminal charge. Later that day, a team of agents followed one of those targets to O'Hare Airport, right down the road from where we're standing right now, where the target was getting ready to board a flight to Germany. Rather than have a quiet afternoon before the Memorial Day holiday, the magistrate judge was working through a complicated criminal complaint involving an atypical product and uncommon criminal charges. He peppered the agent and me with questions to satisfy himself that we had sufficient probable cause. We did. He issued the arrest warrants, and straight from the judge's chambers, I called the agents at the airport and told them to take her down. It turned out that the other defendant, her boss, and one of the other co-conspirators had dropped her off at the airport. Homeland Security investigations pulled him over on the highway, and he was soon arrested as well. And so began the long journey of what would become, and what still stands, as the Department of Justice's largest ever criminal trade fraud prosecution. Over the next several years, we charged 27 corporate and individual defendants across 10 cases in this multi-phase investigation. We tackled both the supply side and the demand side of the criminal activity, and arrested and prosecuted criminal actors up and down the supply chain, overseas suppliers, customs brokers, commercial brokers, transporters, wholesale buyers, packers, and others. We even inserted an undercover agent into one of the country's then largest honey packing companies as a director of procurement, gathering critically important evidence through the undercover work. We seized more than 3,000 drums of honey that entered the country illegally, and we charged losses that totaled $260 million. We used our expansive venue and the potency of an incredibly powerful criminal statute on the books that few people knew about, 18 U.S.C. 545, to prosecute those who created that two-tier pricing structure for illegally imported foreign products. higher prices for buyers and sellers unwilling to transact in illegally entered goods, and cheaper prices for those willing to do so or who were otherwise indifferent. With a strong and unwavering leadership, vision, and support of HSI in Chicago, all the way up to the special agent in charge, plus an extraordinary amount of grit, determination, resolve, and hard work that was required to overcome significant internal resistance and opposition from within the Chicago U.S. Attorney's Office, we successfully brought those landmark prosecutions at a time when the domestic industries needed us to act. We needed to act and to stand in the storm because for some American businesses, their companies were going to go bankrupt and they were going to turn off the lights for good if we didn't do something to stop the flood of illegal products entering into the country. There's a lot more I can say about these cases in a massive third phase of the investigation that sadly never made its way into the courtroom. But I'll leave those comments for another day or maybe for my memoirs. For today's purposes, what I've shared is the origin story and how Chicago became the birthplace of customs and trade fraud prosecutions in the modern era. It also shows that one prosecutor in a group of agents can make a seismic difference and can change the arc of an enforcement landscape. Working together, we took a reactive duty day case, called in to a new federal prosecutor, and we turned it into a landmark prosecution. We are incredibly proud of what we accomplished, how we accomplished it, and what we had to overcome to get there. To this day, Chicago remains one of the largest and most significant inland ports in the United States and a major domestic distribution hub offering expansive venue for criminal and civil trade fraud matters. Today, trade integrity is a key concern both for our regional and national economic security. Under my watch, I can assure you that the Chicago U.S. Attorney's Office is resolutely committed to holding parties accountable for their fraudulent schemes in trade or customs fraud, forced labor, slave labor, and child labor practices, and other adjacent crimes. We are proud to stand with the Department of Justice, the Department of Justice's National Fraud Enforcement Division, the Global Trade and Commerce Enforcement Section, and our many agency partners as the lead prosecutorial partner of the Trade Fraud Task Force. I'm grateful to President Trump and to the Trump administration for bringing greater focus, intensity, resources, and commitment to prosecuting all varieties of trade and related fraud. Those early trade cases that I first began in 2008 laid the groundwork for today's Trade Fraud Task Force. It is deeply, deeply satisfying that the vision that I had for this enforcement area nearly 20 years ago has now become a reality, and that the leaders on this stage and countless others, both within and outside of the Department of Justice, are implementing trade fraud enforcement as a priority across the whole of government. It's also deeply encouraging that this Department of Justice, under the strong leadership of General Blanche and Assistant Attorney General McDonald, support our prosecutors and give them the resources, the tools, and the expertise they need to bring these cases. There should be no doubt the key roads for trade fraud enforcement lead from, to, and through Chicago, both past, present, and now future as well. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Ari Korkamelis, and I serve as the Assistant Secretary for Trade and Economic Security at the Department of Homeland Security. I could not be prouder to stand here with my colleagues from the Department of Justice and our sister federal agencies as we recognize the unprecedented success of the Trade Fraud Task Force. Assistant Attorney General McDonald, thank you and your team for your hard work and collaboration over the past year. The results speak for themselves. I'd also like to recognize the incredible work of our team at DHS, including U.S. Customs and Border Protection, represented today by Acting Deputy Commissioner Ronald Vitello, Executive Assistant Commissioner Susan Thomas, Acting Executive Director Sal Ingracia, as well as the Homeland Security Investigations, represented today by Special Agent in Charge Matthew Scarpino. CBP and HSI man the front lines of our defense against all manners of threats to this nation. Today's achievements would not be possible without their commitment to protect the homeland. The mission of the Department of Homeland Security and the Trade Fraud Task Force is simple: to protect the security, public safety, and economic prosperity of the American people. HSI uses its international and domestic operations in more than 200 cities and 47 countries to identify, investigate, and dismantle criminal activity that exploits the infrastructure of global trade in order to defraud the American people. And as the nation's largest law enforcement agency, CBP leverages its intelligence-driven operations and far-reaching authorities to enforce U.S. tariff and trade law and collect lawful revenue. By combining DHS's operational reach and investigative authorities and DOJ's prosecutorial expertise, the task force represents a sea change in U.S. government strategy to combat trade fraud and eliminate the economic incentives of criminal activity. Trade fraud is not a victimless crime. All Americans pay the price of these violations. Prohibited, unlicensed, or dangerous products harm consumers, workers, families, and entire communities. Forced labor, which is a moral blight on global supply chains, allows bad actors to profit off the suffering of others, creating an unfair cost advantage and undermining ethical producers. The only answer is to cut off the profit motives and create real consequences for those who benefit. And that is exactly what the Trade Fraud Task Force is here to do. It's easy to view duty evasion through misclassification, undervaluation, or transshipment as having little impact on the average American. But President Trump has done more than any president in history to level the playing field for American workers and businesses and right the wrongs of the past. Duty evasion and all forms of trade fraud undermine that mission. While global supply chains have become increasingly complex and opaque, nefarious actors will always look for the way to circumvent our laws with no regard for the harm it inflicts. That is why the Department of Justice and Homeland Security are committed to keeping these illicit acts from robbing the American public and American industry of the prosperity we earn with hard work and sacrifice. As our agencies continue this important work, the new Trade Fraud Resource Guide we're publishing today provides a powerful tool in the fight against fraud. By arming individuals and companies with practical information on statutory requirements and enforcement practices, members of the trade community can stand with us to protect the integrity of our markets, the safety of our citizens, and the security of our nation. We have only just begun this new era in enforcement against trade fraud and are already yielding amazing results. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to introduce Acting Deputy Commissioner Ronald Vitello.
Thank you, Ari. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the 65,000 frontline employees at CBP, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank the team that is represented here, Assistant Attorney General Colin McDonald, the U.S. Attorney Boutros that's here, our team from CBP that lead trade efforts across the enterprise, is why we're in a room like this one today talking about this milestone as it relates to the Trade Task Force, the Trade Fraud Task Force. As Ari said, the department, using the initiative and the leadership of the White House and President Trump, we are now in a place like this, and as it relates to the operations at CBP, to do our jobs better than we've ever been able to do in the past. Full support of every agency represented here and some that are not here to help focus the American public, our frontline employees, and those that are involved in the trade operations in the United States to keep the bad things and the bad people out of the United States and enhance the commerce stream and enhance the good things and the good people who are coming to visit, who are doing business in the United States. So CBP has been doing this for quite some time. The Customs Service goes back hundreds of years inside of the United States. There was a time in our country where customs tariffs and duties paid for the entire enterprise of the U.S. government. And so this is an important contribution to the Treasury. We want to protect the ability for our country to do business with other countries, because that's a benefit to the American consumer. But while we're doing that, Customs and Border Protection officers, other employees at CBP are protecting us by giving themselves that moment to protect the rest of us. And what do I mean by that? As you see here, this $80 million, represented here on the front of the table, is $80 million, of part of a seizure of illegal vapes that were imported into the United States. Some of the companies that are involved in this manufacturing are targeting young people because of the flavors and some of the aspects of these vapes. But those kids and other kids around the world, they put that stuff inside of their bodies. We have no idea how they're manufactured. We have no idea what the standards of those factories are. And so it's the job of CBP to take that moment in time to protect all of us, to keep this out of the commerce stream. What that does, it helps American businesses compete on a level playing field. It protects American consumers so that they know when they ingest a product of any kind or when they engage in commerce with things that are bought in foreign countries, that they know that that stuff is safe. And it protects American businesses so that when they trademark their goods, when they bring products to market that are expensive to produce, they're not competing against state actors like China, where they'll dump products that they bring into the United States, and they tell us the value of those goods are less than what it costs to make them. That puts American companies out of business. That puts American workers out of work, and it puts us all in danger. So it is my pleasure to be here to represent the front line, to thank you for being here, and just give you the idea that this is about protection. We're protecting the commerce stream. That's important. We're protecting the Treasury by making sure that all taxes are fully collected. And we're protecting the American consumer from things that, as you've heard here today, can harm them directly. So thank you all for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm Matthew Milholland, the Acting Deputy Executive Associate Director of Homeland Security Investigations. I'm honored to represent HSI as we highlight the critical work of the Trade Fraud Task Force in our ongoing commitment to protecting the integrity of America's trade system. HSI, the primary investigative agency for the Department of Homeland Security, holds exclusive statutory authority and responsibility to investigate international trade crimes. Our Global Trade Division's Trade Fraud Unit coordinates national programs and operations focused on enforcing U.S. trade laws. They target criminals and criminal schemes intent on evading those laws and harming our economy. The Trade Fraud Task Force has significantly enhanced coordination and enforcement efforts against complex trade fraud schemes. Through collaboration with the Department of Justice and our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, we have expanded resources in over 23 areas of responsibility, ensuring that trade fraud cases presented by HSI are prosecuted efficiently and effectively. HSI's investigative leadership makes a difference. In May of 2026, we led a criminal investigation that resulted in the collection of $549.5 million through a False Claims Act settlement. This case involved a massive scheme to evade anti-dumping and countervailing duties on aluminum extrusions. 6 corporate entities were found guilty of conspiracy, wire fraud, customs fraud, and international money laundering. This defrauded the United States of approximately $1.8 billion in owed duties. In another case, an HSI investigation in the Southern District of Florida led to the $6.3 million fine and guilty plea for violations of the Lacey Act. A company demonstrated willful blindness toward illegally imported birch plywood. Our work uncovered sophisticated evasion tactics, including misrepresenting the country of origin to avoid duties, resulting in a projected revenue loss of over $42 million. During Operation Gold Rush, an HSI global investigation revealed that co-conspirators defrauded the United States by submitting false statements to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They claimed over $750 million in gold jewelry imported from India and the UAE. As a result of HSI's efforts, more than $20 million in gold jewelry, gold bars, and U.S. currency were seized. Tariff evasion is one of the most significant crimes we pursue in this all-of-government approach. These fees are designed to protect American businesses from unfair foreign competition. Evasion schemes such as transshipment through third countries, creation of shell companies, and falsification of import documentation undermine U.S. trade enforcement. They distort fair market competition and result in significant revenue loss. Our coordinated investigative efforts and advanced data analysis are essential to countering these threats. The significance of the Trade Fraud Task Force cannot be overstated. Through strengthened collaboration with our partners, leveraging expertise, and expansive prosecutorial resources, we are now positioned better than ever to protect the American public, preserve the integrity of our economy, and ensure that U.S. businesses compete on a fair and equitable basis. Thank you.
Take a few questions now. Good morning.
False Claim Act case, the one against the Baptist Syndicate that we've mentioned a couple of times. I believe that this was a case that was initially discovered using whistleblowers. How important do these whistleblowers become to discovering more of these cases that allow you to crack down on that actors?
Yes, the question was how valuable and important are whistleblowers with respect to our trade fraud investigations, and the answer is that they are highly valuable. That the whistleblowers in these particular investigations, where there's someone who's inside of an organization and that employee or other individual knows that this particular corporation is taking advantage of the customs laws of the United States to enrich themselves, those people do come forward, and in fact are coming forward even more regularly now that we are focusing on this and that we are messaging this to report those instances of violations of United States law. So that is one door by which our agencies here initiate investigations, is through the KETAM provisions of the False Claims Act. And there is whistleblower protection, and there are also whistleblower payments that can come by virtue of recovering in those cases. It is a great program that we are looking to build upon, and that we are looking to incentivize whistleblowers to come forward to share their stories of the fraud that they see from inside the house. Yes, sir.
You mentioned aluminum and honey. Can you give Americans a sense of what products they might encounter that got here as a result of trade fraud and forced labor?
Yes, and some of my colleagues probably would have more vivid examples, but these schemes run the gamut from the aluminum products to, let's say, mattresses, to gold jewelry, really anything and everything that the American public would seek to purchase. There are foreign actors who are looking to exploit the money of America and then develop these schemes to send those products into the American economy. In many cases, where a particular product is introduced into the American market, within about 6 months, the mom and pop shops, the businesses, the family-run businesses who have operated in the United States for decades, within about 6 months, they can be shut down because of a particular product entering the United States market and being priced too low so that our mom and pop shops are priced out and go out of business. That is a core issue that we are focused on, is to make sure that the American businesses are in a fair fight. And that's what all of the duties and the tariff rules passed by Congress All of the laws that we are executing here are long on the books and tools that Congress has given the executive to execute, and we are doing so with the American worker and the American business in mind. Yes, and I'd like the CBP folks to speak more to what is around us, but essentially this warehouse is one main place where inspections occur, and I'll welcome you to describe further.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Thomas, Executive Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Trade.
Hi, Sal Ingrassio, Executive Director, Office of Field Operations for Trade.
So a warehouse like this is a centralized examination station where we bring all our resources to one place to examine goods for various reasons. Agriculture, we get smuggled plant and animal products that are harmful to our agricultural industry. Goods like this where vapes that are not registered or cleared to be imported are seized. To the question before about the various industries and commodities, it is true. Everything from household goods, consumer goods, to products that the citizens are using every single day could be evading our tariffs, but also harmful to the American citizen. We bring the goods here to inspect. We have officials in the Office of Trade and the Office of Field Operations that are looking at the goods themselves, the entities involved in the import and export process, and the paperwork's involved to uncover what illicit scheme they are using. And then we bring in our counterparts from FDA and other agencies as well to help make that determination of whether something is admissible or not.
And I think this is a great example. The location you're in right now is called the Central Examination Station. It allows CBP to consolidate all our resources and also accommodate our partners in trade to all come to this location. It also allows us to consolidate all of our new technology here. And so everything that is examined at this location goes through an extreme screening process. This place is built to do that, to protect the American people, to identify violations like the ones that we spoke about today.
Those are drones.
Drones.
So there are some drones that are being made with forced labor. You've heard that here a few times today, where that is where we do investigations. Sometimes the workers are held and they're not able to leave. They're not paid their paychecks. They may have their passport and their documentation that establishes their legitimacy held by companies. They work for basically nothing. And so we are responsible for ensuring that goods that are made with forced labor do not enter the United States commerce. Those are the
So
vapes.
and the table in front of us are vapes that will be seized because these are all FDA violations that you see in front of you on these tables. Vapes are not allowed in for certain flavors. So some of the flavors that are allowed around the world but not in the United States appeal to children. And so we do not allow in those through the FDA violations, like a bubblegum flavor, pink lemonade. There are certain flavors that appeal to children that will enforce for the FDA, not allow them to enter the commerce of the United States, and in a lot of cases seize them and destroy them.
Can someone explain how an importer would lie about the country of origin to avoid some of these things? How you're able to protect that?
So CBP has highly sophisticated data capabilities to trace the origin of products. This really is a data-driven enterprise, and CBP is leveraging the full power of data to be able to isolate and identify the true origin of products. So when someone, for instance, says that, in fact, they came through Singapore, CBP, through its analytical tools, is able to disprove that and ultimately prove the lie of the fraudster behind the scheme who is attempting to evade the duties that are called for with that particular product and from the particular country of origin. Yes, so the whole of government approach to law enforcement championed by President Trump is having extraordinary results, is showing extraordinary results across the board. When you get people in a room, these folks here, these partners who are experts in this field, and they say, hey, let's work together to solve this problem that has long been elusive to the federal law enforcement apparatus. When you bring people together with that common goal and that singular focus to solve this problem for the American people, that opens doors, that creates a bench of agents, it creates a bench of prosecutors who now know how to do this. As you heard U.S. Attorney Boutros, he was one of the first to spearhead this back in 2008. We need more attorneys like U.S. Attorney Boutros who've actually handled these cases, who can understand the sophisticated schemes that are being used by these international fraudsters. So we see these task force environments as critical to the long-term durability of our efforts. And we've proved it time and time again with the Homeland Security Task Force, with various other task forces across the country where law enforcement comes together to solve a common purpose and work for the public good. And that's what we're endeavoring to do here to protect the American worker, protect the vibrancy of the American economy.
When you compare, let's say, seizures from the year before and Washington now, are we seeing?
So with respect to the $1 billion number, that number, as far as I am aware, has never been achieved before in a one-year time period. This is a historic effort that's been brought to bear by all of these partners to reach that level in about, I believe it was about a 10-month period of time. So that fantastic settlement embodies the work of this group here to bring together the collective resources to ensure that the American worker and American businesses are no longer being defrauded, and that the public fisc is no longer being defrauded by these actors. And this is just one example. That case is one example of many, large and small, that are both in the works and that have been brought to fruition at really record pace in the last 10 months. And now, with the introduction of the National Fraud Enforcement Division 98 days ago, we are bringing this work in-house into the Fraud Division so that we can build on these historic successes and make sure that we are as durable as the American people require us to be. Any further?
Most of the stuff comes from China, India, paradigm rents. This is the stuff you guys are only bring cash. Dollar amount wise, what's the stuff that's still out there that you haven't?
So I wouldn't be able to speculate on what's gotten through. Our CBP folks do a great job to capture as much of it as they can. It's then the DOJ's job to prosecute and to bring appropriate civil enforcement action to make sure that the bad actors in this space are appropriately brought to justice. Yes, sir. Final question. So I'll answer that question, which is that we have a team of very experienced prosecutors here in Chicago and in across the U.S. Attorney Network and in the Fraud Division, the National Fraud Enforcement Division, that we will be leaning on and relying on to bring these cases and to do them bigger and faster than we've done them before. And we look forward to reporting back to you all on the successes of this new endeavor with the Trade Fraud Task Force. Thank you all.